green bar on OBS, which means things are okay. Let's hope it fucking stays that way. Comcast is having a shitty night, so everybody cross your fingers, do a fucking rain dance, sacrifice something. I don't know what everybody adheres to, but let's try to keep this going as long as possible. Now that I've said that, the whole fucking thing's probably gonna come crashing down again. But anyway,
Comcast heard you talking shit.
Yeah, they did. They did. They saw me celebrating they're dropping out of trying to acquire the Marvel or the X-Men.
The Fox deal.
Yeah, and now the fucking ninjas are here. So anyway, things seem to be running okay. I'm gonna turn my mic down just a little bit. But anyway, this is once again this is episode 117 of SDGC. As always, I am one of your hosts, John, aka @Mr. on Twitter. And Justin is here. Sam from Tick is here. Sam, what's up, dude? It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Not much, just slipping in. I'm like Kramer, just no knocking, just barge in, open the door. That's it.
you're like our go-to guy. You're our guy waiting in the reserves.
The best kind of neighbor, the one that comes in and eats all your food.
It really is. It really is. No hellos, no how you doing, how was work. Just hey, you're out of juice. What's up with that?
We need that sound jingle from Seinfeld whenever you come into the podcast.
The little slap.
That's exactly what we need.
We can make that happen. We'll find a way.
We need to. Yeah, life needs to find a way. And Brandon is here. Because Brandon has missed, I think, we've been doing this for like 2.5 years now. Brandon has missed, I think, a total of 3 episodes the entire time.
Maybe 3.
Yeah, maybe 3. And Kyle Foley is here. This is Kyle's second time on the podcast. He's been begging me for like 2 weeks to play State of Decay 2 with him, but I'm sorry, man. I can't tear myself away from Octopath Traveler right now. I can't do it, man. I'm hooked.
I can't blame you. Really the only reason for that is just I want to play that game and I refuse to touch it until I have people to play with.
Dude, it's so fucking good. It is so fucking good. I can't get over it. So like and I want to talk about that real quick because Sam, have you played Octopath Traveler yet?
No. I was talking about State of Decay 2.
Oh, State of Decay 2.
Yeah, I've been playing Octopath Traveler for whatever it's been, a week now. I haven't played as much as you, but I've been playing it.
I mean, I've played a lot. I'm like almost 40 hours into the game, and it came out Friday. So I've been playing a lot of Octopath Traveler. And anybody else on here has anybody else on here played that yet?
Yeah, no, I don't have a Switch
really
yet.
Want to, but haven't been able to yet.
So Octopath Traveler, I have been going through like a period of bad depression and anxiety for like the past 3 months, and as anybody who knows me knows very well, I am a child of the Super Nintendo era, and my favorite game of all time is Final Fantasy VI. Oh, I just hit the microphone. So when I have been interested in Octopath Traveler, despite its stupid fucking name, since we first saw it.
It's a pretty bad name.
It's a bad name, dude. I'm not gonna bullshit. I'm not gonna.
I mean, so when they first announced it as Project Octopath Traveler, like one would assume that they were going to improve the name, like. So I Am Setsuna was announced as Project Setsuna, and then they added the I Am. They dropped the project and added the I Am, and I Am Setsuna is a pretty good name for that game, right? So I figured they were going to do the same thing with Octopath, drop the project, and work around the word Octopath somehow, or work around the word Traveler. But nope, they just dropped project, just went straight Octopath Traveler.
Well,
I will say this though, like that is not a name people are going to forget.
No, it is a very, very.
But it also might be one that like. I don't know. It's just a very awkward sound.
It's too vague.
Yeah, it's an awkward sounding name. Anyway, sorry. Go on, John.
So no, I was just gonna say that it like in the context of the game it makes sense because there are 8 separate stories being told, and I don't want to like lead anybody astray who hasn't played it yet. Like I've already seen the final boss and all that because I don't really give a shit about spoiling myself and stuff like this. But I do know that, I mean, these are 8 separate stories, and there is some character interaction in the form of little vignettes. They call them, like, it's like character interactions or travel stories.
Sort of like, so I haven't played Octopath Traveler, but have you played Star Ocean, like the old Star Ocean?
Yeah, well, it's, you know what, Brandon, you know what I would compare it more to is Tales.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know how you got the 2 characters standing in front of each other, and there's just dialogue back and forth. Yeah, it's very similar to Tales. it's a little jarring at first because when these characters are going through their different stories and like confronting the villain of each chapter or whatever, like there's those other characters aren't present on the screen, but when the battle starts, everybody's there. However, when these little character vignettes are happening and the two characters are you know, whoever's talking back and forth is talking to each other, they're talking like they were there experiencing those events. So there is character. So like, you know, people say there's no character interaction. That's not 100% true. There is character interaction. These stories, yeah, like these characters are very much present in those people's in these stories. It's just the focus for each story is on that individual character.
Makes sense.
The and I'm sure you guys have seen gameplay videos, but the battle sprites for this game are fucking gorgeous.
It's Final Fantasy VI on crack.
It is. Go ahead, man.
It is a gorgeous game. Like I haven't seen much of it, but like you know, I watched like the Digital Foundry video on it. I've seen a bunch of screenshots and stuff, and I really love the way they've combined like modern effects with like 3D pixel art. It's really cool.
I seen that in chat. Says, what are you guys talking about? We're talking about Octopath Traveler right now, man.
But kind of going off of the stuff you're talking about, John, with the it's kind of a limited character interaction, and that's one of the things where you and I disagree on the level of greatness of the game.
Yeah,
is to me it is arguably, and I'm someone who generally prefers a more realistic looking game. I don't play a ton of retro stuff as much. Not that I don't like it; it's just not entirely my preference. But this game is beautiful. Every time, I mean, I've tweeted out screenshots, and I'd be like, "This is the most beautiful game I think I've ever seen." It's incredible, but the storytelling to me is so bland that it's not that it's bland, it's that it doesn't live up to what the game looks like, if that makes sense. When I look at this game, looking at this, and I'm looking like, yeah, this is going to be the greatest story. There's going to be so much interaction. There's going to be so much depth to it, and maybe it gets better as I go on. I've only played about 15 hours of the game, so maybe there's a lot more that I'm missing. So far, I've gone through 5 character stories, and I've not really gotten that. I mean, some of them are cool, and I've gone through them like, okay, I like your backstory. There's some interesting stuff here. I'm enjoying this, but it feels very shallow to me on that level.
So I'm going to gently push back on you and just say that I'm not going to disagree with you, and I do, and like I think we've talked about this actually on Twitter, but I do understand all the criticisms that people might have against the story, right? Like they're, you know, this is not your typical JRPG where you know, a group of, you know, disparate people get together and they run off and they save the world from, you know, Deus Ex Machina bad guy, right? Like that's not what's going on here. These are very personalized, very individually told stories. That was the impression that I always got from Square Enix. Like from day one, you know, they said there are 8 different paths you can travel, 8 different stories to tell. I never really got the sense that there was going to be an overarching narrative tying everything together. So I guess going into it with that expectation, I am more than satisfied.
But that's such a good format for JRPGs. I mean, even Final Fantasy VI itself does that twice. Like, so you have the part at the beginning of Final Fantasy VI where the party splits up and you have to choose the different vignettes, and then also at the end, once the World of Ruin occurs, you have that part where you have to get the party back together.
Yeah.
It's again a part where you're seeing little vignettes of the individual characters, but then they all come together and they continue the main plot.
Yeah,
and it worked perfectly.
Well, and my thing's not that I was expecting it. I knew what it was going in. I knew that it was 8 individualized personal stories with these characters. My thing is, I was hoping there would be more interaction when you bring party members in. I mean, this seems so dumb, but even in cutscenes, when you're going through someone's specific story and you're not seeing the other characters really involved at all.
I mean, it's jarring,
It's incredibly little. Like, I look at this game, and I would probably say it's a 9 out of 10. Like, this is not criticism where I'm saying, oh, this game's awful. I don't understand how people like it. But it's just because it looks so great, and because I think a lot of it's because there was so much hype behind it. There's a lot of it's like, oh, I just wish this would have been better. I just wish this would have been more connected. If I wanted to consider it one of my top, like, of all time. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it is an absolutely incredible game that I mean, I've been spending not as much time as I probably spent on, you know, God of War, where when I started playing that, I couldn't stop. But this is one of those games where I've been playing it and I've been really, really into it. It's definitely a great game, probably one of the best games of the the year.
See,
but there's enough that holds it back from being one of the best, even of like the decade.
so for me, like I have done, like this is one of those games that's in my head. We all get those games here, right? Like that game that you can't stop thinking about when you're not playing it. Octopath Traveler is that game for me right now. When I'm not playing it, I want to be playing it. When I'm not playing it, I'm thinking about it. It's been a long time since a game has roped me in like this. And I said on Twitter, like at almost 40 hours in, I am confident in saying this is easy front runner for Game of the Year for me right now, and it's up there in one of my favorite games of all time. Like I'm fucking in love with this game. It is the best battle system in any JRPG I have ever played. Like hands down.
My big disagreement with you, and we argued this on Twitter, was Game of the Year, and I've been comparing it to God of War because God of War is my Game of the Year right now, and I don't think anything has come close to touching it. And it's where I look at and I like both of them, but God of War doesn't have those big flaws that I look at and go, ooh, that could have been much better. That should have been.
And I totally get that. Like I mean, I totally understand that. I mean, God of War for me is probably, I would say, my right now my runner up for Game of the Year. And it's probably Sam and Justin and Brandon, like would you agree God of War is probably one of the best games of the year?
Oh yeah,
undoubtedly.
it's my front runner for Game of the Year right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, mine too.
It's the only AAA game I've played all year.
My thing with that is, looking at the two, is that one of them had been accurately, in my mind, defined as generation defining. When God of War came out, people had said this is one of the greatest games of the generation, of this console generation, not just one of the greatest of this year. And when I first played it, I tweeted about this too. When I was like 4 hours in, I was like, that's stupid. This game's not that great. And then when I just sat and played for the next 20 hours straight, I was like, holy shit, I don't think I've ever played anything this good. Which is, looking back and having some time separated, I have played things that are really good. But it still stands above looking at just the PlayStation 4. I could probably say that it's the best PlayStation 4 game. I look at Octopath Traveler and I don't think I can say it's the best Switch game, and we're early in the console.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The PS4 has been out for 5 years. The Switch is a year and a half.
So somebody in chat, who was that? Somebody in chat. Oh, it's Dio. He says Octopath soundtrack is one of the best of all time, and I fucking agree.
I listened to that final boss theme.
It's a darn good one.
It was pretty hot.
Dude, well, and that's just phase
I don't
one.
like listening to soundtrack stuff out of the context of a thing, so I
don't normally either, but I know I'm never gonna play Octopath Traveler unless it gets ported.
Part of what's made Octopath Traveler so cool is it's been we're going back to games that we haven't seen in a long time. Like really well made games from the 90s is basically what this is emulating. Well, and the ones that we've had have just been indie titles. They've been really good, but they haven't been quite at this level. And so I think that's what's made it as big of a success. I mean, it's a great game, but I think that's also what's helped push it up a little.
Well, and what's really
I think,
go ahead, don't Justin. No. Go.
I think one of the cool things about it is, like, especially Square Enix has kind of been guilty of people don't want this type of RPG
retro
anymore.
Yeah.
Well, not even just the retro graphics, but even like turn-based battle systems, like moving more towards real time and stuff. And I think it's just kind of a sign that there are still people that really do care about this like classic style of RPG. And I think that's, a good thing. Instead of just, Square trying to make everything some variation of like FF15 or something like that, or Kingdom Hearts or something. Like, now they can kind of like diversify among their various other franchises.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, right? Because I think, there's something very important about Octopath Traveler that we're not mentioning, and that's sales, right? Like, so this game is... Yeah. So Square Enix was not prepared for how well this game was going to...
I mean, Setsuna did nothing.
Yeah, Setsuna was an average... It was okay, right? Like Setsuna didn't move the needle. Like, it was comfort food RPG stuff. But it was Chrono Trigger, but not as good. But Octopath Traveler has been it's sold out on Amazon. It's sold out in Japan. Like, you cannot find it in retail in Japan.
I had to apologize for the low shipment.
I got curious today on my way home from work, and I stopped at 2 GameStops and 1 Best Buy, and it was sold out at all 3 of them. It's Square Enix, Brandon. Yeah, they issued an apology and
they apologized for the low volume of Japanese copies.
Yeah, in Japan, like, like it. I think they said it would have cleared like 200K copies opening week if they had shipped enough.
That's unbelievable. Oh, well, so you know what that means, right? Like that means that we are going to get more games that look and sound just like this.
Yeah.
Well,
Hopefully.
they're expanding that studio, aren't they?
Yes.
Like,
and don't forget, this is the Bravely Default team. So
yeah, like they just I think announced that they're expanding that studio.
And so, like, I couldn't be happier because it tells me and it tells everybody that there's a desire for games that look like this. There's a market for games like this. I could not be happier because.
And again, like it goes along with like the backlash against the Final Fantasy VI PC port.
Yep.
Like they heard that feedback that like people don't like.
Oh God, can you right? Brandon? Can you imagine Final Fantasy VI remade? In the style of Octopath Traveler?
Yeah, the greatest thing ever. I would be there day one.
I would. So Brandon, let me ask you this.
Also, of the opinion that Final Fantasy VI doesn't need a remake.
It doesn't. And I played it yet again. I finished it again 2 weeks ago. I've on Super Nintendo or on the SNES Classic because I finished that game. I play it annually.
Wouldn't say no to an Unreal Engine.
I would not say no. Brandon, would you buy a Switch if it was a Switch exclusive? Final Fantasy VI remake. Like Octopath Traveler.
No, because I know it would never stay a Switch exclusive.
You're probably right about that.
You know Square Enix too.
They would never remake Final Fantasy VI and leave it as a Switch exclusive. So no, I wouldn't. But I mean, would I think about it? Yeah.
Oh my God! But like, dude, that soundtrack. I sent Brandon the track listing for the final boss, at least the phase 1 of it. And Brandon, how sexy is that? Like
it was. I mean, yeah, it's real good. It doesn't top my favorites of the SNES era, but it was like, it evoked those.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it really evokes those, and it kind of really draws from that. And I will say, Kyle, like without spoiling anything, so I know how the game ends. There is an ending to the game. And that's all I'm gonna say. Like there is something that brings everything together at the end. Getting any further into that, he's getting into spoiler territory, and I don't want to go there. But if you keep going, it's not just 8 separate stories. I will say that there is something at the end that brings everything together. There's a few things you have to do in order to trigger that, but it does happen. So and whether or not you're going to be satisfied with that, I leave that to you to discover.
Well, I've already been satisfied. I mean, it's one of, like I said, I'm being really nitpicky, and part of that's just because it's really fun to argue with you. It's a great game. It's an incredible game, and at the end of the year, it's gonna be in my top 5. There's no doubt about that. Partially because there's really, other than Spider-Man and Red Dead Redemption 2, is Red Dead Redemption 2 still this year? I can't even remember.
It's apparently.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, theoretically, still this year. We'll see if that changes.
I
don't ever believe them when they say that's going to come out. But anyway, my point is, there's not that many games coming out throughout the rest of the year that I'm thinking, okay, this is going to compete as a true front runner. But I mean, we'll see. But this game is great. I love it, and the things that I would like to change about it are only things that would make it one of the greatest of all time. But it doesn't stop it from being one of the best I've played in a long time. And I don't play those kind of games. I don't play JRPGs very often. I certainly don't play any type of turn-based anything other than Pokemon, really. So it's really out of my wheelhouse, and it's pulled me in very easily.
Well, and like I said, this is
an incredible game.
Like I said, the battle system in this is one of the best I've ever played. The break system is a little similar to Bravely Default, and where you can build up turns every round and then expend them. But what's kind of the wrench that's thrown into that is that each enemy has a little break meter, which is just a shield icon with a number on it, right? And you've got to, and there's a bunch of question marks underneath it, and you've got to figure out which weapon or spell will bring that down. So, like for example, I was just fighting right before we came on the podcast. I was fighting one of the bosses. He had a shield. He had like a shield level of 9 and 5 question marks. So I knew that there were 5 weapons or spells that I could use to bring that down. And when it hits 0, the boss or enemy, whatever, any enemy you're fighting enters a break status where it's stunned for a round and damage is increased. And that's when you just sit there and you wail on it and you spend all those points. So, but there's that risk and reward going on, right? It's like, okay, well, this thing is charging a big attack. It's got 5 shields left. Do I expend all this now and bring the shield down as quickly as I can? only to find out that my attacks are weaker, or do I save it and hope that I can live through this thing, and then slowly whittle the shield down, and then use all those points that have been built up to just wail on it really hard.
So how is the difficulty for someone that's experienced with JRPGs?
It's difficult. It's not an easy game. Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, it's relatively difficult at times. There's other times where I'm breezing through things, but a part of that is because I'm so used to, in my limited experience in this genre, grinding out as often as I can.
Yeah.
So I have no problem with wasting time grinding. So I do that excessively and repeatedly. So by the time I get to the parts where I otherwise would have been a lot faster, kind of a little stronger than I should.
I'll tell you,
it's difficult.
I'll tell you this much: in Chapter 2, Chapter 2 is where you hit a big difficulty spike, and
Yes.
the bosses in Chapter 2 get a lot more difficult than the bosses. And what's interesting, Brandon, is that in Chapter 1, everything scales, right? Like there's one boss,
Okay.
there's one boss called Helgenish. He's like a bad guy, and you fight him. He's Primrose's Chapter 1 villain, and if you fight him just with Primrose, he's not that bad. But if you save Primrose for like your fourth character, and at that point you have a full party, then then his attacks hit the whole party, and he attacks for much more damage. So everything is scaling.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love, because at first I was like, wait, every single one of these recommended level 5. This is way too easy to breeze through and pick them all up.
Yep.
And then I get through the first one, I went and picked up Alphen, and it goes, oh, now it's 7. I was like, huh. So my Therion is at 7, but Alphen's only at 5. So I'm a little under leveled for this. So I grinded, and I got the next one done, and then it goes up even more. There's so many things about this game that I appreciate. That my complaints seem so minor.
Well, it's one of the best scaling systems I've seen in an RPG. To be perfectly honest with you.
Like it says enough about Octopath, just that like it's being compared to the masterpieces, the classics.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna fall short in some ways. It doesn't have the budget. It doesn't, it's not gonna be Final Fantasy VI 2.
But it doesn't need to be, right? Like it's got to be somebody else's Final Fantasy VI. And I'll end on this, and then we'll move on to our open world topic. But my son is 10 years old, and he'll be here tomorrow, but he has seen me playing the demo, and he came downstairs, and he's just like me. He's going to grow to be just like me, big nerd. And he came downstairs, he had a Switch in his hand, and he saw me playing, and he says, Daddy, what's that? And I said, oh, this is Octopath.
It just fucking looks like a piece of art.
Well, and he's looking at it, and he's like, this looks awesome. And I was like, yeah, like this is, so then I was like, he was like, it's like Final Fantasy, Dad. It's like that game, it's like the game that you loved when you were my age, not his age, but, and I was like, yeah, I know, right? And so he downloaded the demo. Like, do you want to download the demo and try it? He goes, yeah. So, so games like this, I love the fact that games like this, like my son is going to grow up with a style of game that is my personal favorite, means so much to me on a personal level. And the fact that it's selling well, which means we're going to get more games like this, is even better. I mean,
not just from Square. I mean, this sends a message to
everybody.
RPGs. Yeah.
Everybody, and Brandon, I'll tell you right now, if this game had just been another like flat 2D pixel game, it wouldn't. And
no, it wouldn't. I mean, it had so much. Like people were freaking out when it got first revealed. They're like,
Yeah.
I've never seen an RPG that looks like this.
Yeah, I mean,
I haven't seen one that looks like this in 20 years.
Even if you
don't
go ahead.
I don't think it's going to send as big of a message as you guys do. I think it's going to send a message, but it's going to, because here's the real thing, and this the cynic in me. It is a very successful game for what it is. It's a very great game for what it is, but it's not what brings in tens of millions of dollars, and so it's not one of these things that
I will take that.
Nobody is expecting that sort of.
No. I'm not either. So I think it's going to start bringing back a lot of those things in niche markets. So for people that like those things, going to do a great job. It's not enough yet to really push it in.
I'm not saying like Final Fantasy 16 is going to look like this.
I would love that though.
I would too, honestly. But like I feel like at least some developers will take note and be like, okay, we can emulate this style.
It's definitely going to make a difference in the JRPG scene.
Yeah, that's what
and I'm hoping what that leads to down the road is in the next couple years we get one of these games that is like this, but it's truly generation defining one that 20 years later people are going to sit on a podcast on Twitch or whatever has replaced it by then, and they're talking about. I think it's going to spawn a game like that, and people are going to look back and say, "Hey, this helped revitalize the genre that for a long time had really started to decline, and really just became kind of a, hey, we're making this because you guys like nostalgia, and you'll buy it because you're fans of this."
Hey, shout out to Julian in chat. What's up, dude? I'll say this much, and then I'll end on this. I think that we are either going to see not a numbered Final Fantasy, but a Final Fantasy game from Square Enix.
Spinoff? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very possible.
yeah. In this that, or there's going to be a remake of a classic game, be it 4 or 6 or 5.
See, they could have done Secret of Mana like this. Like they just remade Secret of Mana.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that
And
would have
they
been
made it
so
look
good.
like
Or can you
shit.
imagine like a fucking Mario game made like? I mean, God, I mean, literally the possibilities are fucking endless for this style of visual.
Or Chrono Trigger.
Oh,
really
don't
good.
even get me
Or
started. Oh my God. Oh,
I mean,
that would be
like
so
that
good.
whole tilt shift thing works for me, and other games have used it well.
Or
Like
Brandon, fucking Earthbound.
yeah, or Earthbound, exactly.
Yeah.
Earthbound look amazing. Like there's actually fan art that already looks like there's like tilt shift Earthbound fan art, so you can already see.
Oh yeah,
what that
I've
would look
I've
like.
seen that. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's really good.
We all know what we really need and what we're gonna get, and what the world deserves. This engine and looking like this is another remake of Skyrim.
Yeah, I'm all in. I'm in on that shit, dude. Give me that
Because
fucking
I say
2D
that
pop-up book Skyrim.
As I say that, I'm like 90% joking, but that 10% of me is like, shit, I would buy that.
You know
I
you would. That's the thing.
I would play that. Oh my god, that would be incredible.
I'm not gonna lie, like it has reinvigorated my interest in like now I just like I don't give a shit about big AAA games. Like I play them. I'm gonna play Red Dead Redemption 2, but I want more games like this. I want more games that harken back to I don't know, just a simpler time for me, and
I mean, that's what I've been doing basically this entire year. I've been playing Overwatch all the time, but like every game that I've played this year has been like little indie stuff.
Yeah.
I played the shit out of a new tower defense game that came out that looks like a Flash game from like 15 years ago.
Well, dude, there are a ton of indie games coming in the next month too, Brandon. I mean,
I started Hollow Knight last night.
Hollow Knight's great, dude. Brandon, Chasm comes out next week.
Wait, I probably think I have.
You need to look it up, Brandon, because it's your fucking jam. I guarantee it.
Chasm. Is it KASM?
No, it's a CHASAM. But we played it at PAX, and it's fucking awesome. Dead Cells drops the full game on Switch on August 7th, which I'm fucking day one on that. I'll be on vacation for that too.
I wonder. I feel like Hollow Knight blew up in popularity when it hit the Switch.
Hollow Knight's really good, but Owlboy is better.
I've seen people say that Dead Cells is better than Hollow Knight.
I would agree with that as well.
Anywhere near the same kind of.
I would say Hollow Knight is great, but the visual style of Owlboy and Dead Cells speak to me much more than Hollow Knight does.
I haven't played Owlboy, but I've heard not the greatest about the gameplay. So
I don't know. I loved it, man. I thought it was really, really intuitive. But anyway,
I didn't hear it was bad. It's just that it was kind of basic for the genre. But yeah.
It's fantastic how many Metroidvania-esque games there are, because we've got all those, and then we got Ori coming up early next year as well.
Yeah, I think Dio heard somebody.
I mean, yeah, like Metroidvania has been an embarrassment of riches for the last.
It
10
really
years.
has.
It kicked off with like Shadow Complex and Dust.
And
like
then Axiom Verge is another good one.
Axiom Verge was pretty recent. That was only like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I guess it was, wasn't it?
Yeah,
shit, dude.
Yeah, it was only a couple years ago.
Well, I want to go ahead and move on to a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and this kind of got spurred for me when I was reading just the other day, just some news about Just Cause 4, and I saw some screenshots and I saw a little video, and I thought to myself, okay, like it's another open world game, and it really kind of got me thinking about how far open world games have come and kind of where they've stopped growing. And I think the genre itself, with the exception of just 1 or 2 games over the past few years, has grown kind of stagnant and stale for me. And I want to have a discussion about what we think the problems are, if there are any problems. I mean, you guys are free to disagree, but also what the genre can do to reinvigorate itself. And an example of what I'm talking about is Shadow of War. I am a huge Lord of the Rings fanboy. Like it's up there with Star Wars for me. I read the books every 2 years. I grew up with Tolkien. I could pick out every discrepancy between the books and the movies, and my friends can't watch the movies with me because I'll fucking sit there and do that for 3.5 hours. But I loved Shadow of Mordor. I platinumed that game. Like I had a great time with that game. And that came out in 2014. So flash forward 3 years to 2017. I pick up Shadow of War, and you would think that this would be right up my alley. It's more Shadow of Mordor. It's
Shadow of Mordor plus.
Exactly. It's you're stealthing around. You're killing orcs. There's more lore. It's Lord of the Rings. You're visiting Minas Ithil and fighting alongside Gondorian soldiers. I played it for 2 hours and I got fucking bored. I actually fell asleep playing it on Friday. The Friday night I got it, I passed out. I was like, fuck. I played it for 2 hours and I dropped it, deleted it. I was like, I'm just not having any fun. This is fucking boring. Pick up Assassin's Creed Origins. I start playing that. Beautiful open world Egypt. Like Egypt, I love Egyptian mythology more than any other historical period. And for years I was like, Egypt. It's got to be Egypt for Assassin's Creed. I played it for about 5 hours and I was like, I'm done. Like this isn't any fun to me. And with the exception of like Breath of the Wild, open world games recently, and Horizon was fun. Horizon was really fun. I platinumed that. But aside from that, that entire genre has just lost its luster for me because it is just nothing but more of the same over and over. And Sam, I think you would even agree that even Witcher 3 falls into those tropes.
I don't really, but that's for a different reason than I get where you're going with this, but I think it avoids it for a different reason.
I feel that way about Rockstar games.
Okay. So all right. So let's unpack this. So I think that open world games are at a crossroads right now. For me anyway, and not from a sales perspective. I mean, let's face it, Red Dead Redemption 2 is going to fucking clean up. Starfield, whenever that drops, it's going to clean up. But something has to be done, I think, in order to shake things up. And I'm wondering what you guys think, because I think Breath of the Wild did things in an open world game. I mean, Breath of the Wild allowed you to break it, basically. Like you could break that fucking game. You could take your time freezing powers, freeze a rock, beat the shit out of it, jump on it, and then sail it across a chasm. Right? Like there were like moving ball mazes in those little shrines where I figured out if I just flip, like everything's motion controlled. So if I just flip my controller over, like I can have the ball drop on a flat surface and roll it into the hole without having to navigate the maze. Like that was brilliant. That was genius. And that is something that Nintendo did, and Breath of the Wild was able to break that mold for me. And I was like, wow, I am doing things. This game is allowing me to do things like climbing sheer surfaces. That's a great example in Breath of the Wild. After playing Breath of the Wild, I went back to Horizon. Justin, this is relevant for you because I know you love Horizon. I went back to Horizon, and all I could feel was boxed in because Aloy couldn't climb anything. Like there's no climbing in the game unless you have those little things, little yellow nubs sticking out. And I thought to myself, God, I feel so restricted in movement. I feel like I'm boxed in, even though I've got this huge open world. So I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think? And this is just a group discussion. There's no turns here. What do you guys think about the state of open world games? What do you think can be done to refine the genre? Do you think there's anything that needs to be done to refine the genre, or are you fine with the way things are?
I mean, I'll start off. I think that the key to good open world design is good traversal, just flat out from the bottom line. Like your entire game falls apart if it's not fun to move, even more than the copy paste quest design that Ubisoft games are accused of having. If it's not fun to work through your world, it doesn't matter how good the quest design is. Like that shit is just boring. And like the Elder Scrolls doesn't have any praise, but they use fast travel. So again, they don't make it tedious to get through their world. They just allow you to literally open your map and click wherever you want to go, and that works for that game. Like if you don't like and the way they do it is unique. Like so Grand Theft Auto the way the GTA games make it fun to get through the world is like the chaos, right? It's just random chaos all the time. You're just driving down the street and pedestrians are swerving into you. Like that's the gameplay, right? It's like trying to navigate through the world as fast as you can without crashing and running people over, and like that's what that's what gets you there. Then Spider-Man is gonna like again. Spider-Man is probably gonna have some pretty fucking boring ass copy paste quests, right?
Yep.
But like, do you care? Is that really like the thing that's on your mind when you're swinging through those buildings?
So that's a
like,
good point, Brandon.
You can take people's minds off of the monotony by making the moment-to-moment gameplay as thrilling as humanly possible.
That's a really good point. Like that was one of the
think
things.
like Dying Light. I think had
that was
some of the poorest side quest design of any open world game I've ever played.
Yeah, I would agree.
It was nothing but fetch quests. And
it hits every trope in the book. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the most basic of fetch quests. The most literal A to B and then back to A fetch quests ever. But the parkour and shit in Dying Light was so much fun to do. So much fun to just bound across the rooftops and shit. Getting from A to B and back to A was, for me, enough to 100% the game.
So
even like while acknowledging the quest design being borderline awful, I still enjoyed the quest.
That was one of the reasons that I loved Sunset Overdrive as much as I did.
And again, yeah, Sunset Overdrive. So like that, and Assassin's Creed obviously has the climbing. Like all of these games have, and this is what makes them bearable for people. It's the unique traversal mechanics of each one.
But I just
Xenoblade Chronicles, you get your scale. Like, all of these have their little gimmicks, right? And that's fine.
That's a really interesting point. Like I hadn't really considered traversal as part of the draw of an open world game, right?
Yeah, I mean, Witcher, you get your Roach. Like they all.
Yeah, but Roach controls like shit, though. I'm sorry, Sam.
He does.
But
and again, this is why I don't like.
But you also got fast travel as well.
And,
you
The
can.
Witcher does have. It has the Elder Scrolls style fast travel.
You can.
Right. And Brandon, are you done? Because I don't want to interrupt you.
No, I'm done.
Okay, so I want to kind of build on what he was saying, if that's all right with you.
Please,
I think
please.
traversal is one of 3 pillars necessary for open world games, and an open world game can hit 2 of them and maybe not hit the other one, and that's fine. But if it can't hit at least 2 of them, then there's a problem. So the 3 pillars that I'm thinking of are traversal, like he explained. So I'm not going to rehash that. He gave some great examples. But then there's also narrative feedback and gameplay feedback. So narrative feedback, at least the first time you're playing Horizon Zero Dawn, for me, one of the greatest things, one of the reasons I wanted to identify with Aloy, one of the reasons I wanted to protect her, push through on her journey, was simply the mystery of the world. Trying to understand what was going on, because this is not a normal apocalypse. Humanity is making a comeback, but what are these machines doing? Why do they have their ecosystem? What's up with these caves and this weird technology that's resurfacing, all this stuff. And that provides a really satisfying loop. In my opinion, the side quests, Justin may hate me for this, the side quests in Horizon Zero Dawn aren't really anything to write home about. They're okay.
They're okay. Yeah.
There's a couple of standouts. There's like 2 standouts off the top of my head I can think of that are good, and the rest are like they're serviceable. But that doesn't matter, at least the first time you're playing it, because you want to understand what's going on, and then you get the reveals and. When you find out what the name of the game means, and it just blows your mind. You're like, oh, okay. That's what's so satisfying there. And it doesn't hurt that Horizon has incredibly satisfying combat against the machines as well. That really, it provides a satisfying loop as well. A more recent example for me would be State of Decay 2. That game's issues aside, it has some very, very satisfying gameplay loops of gathering resources, killing the plague hearts, then gathering material to cure your infected survivors.
Can I butt in real quick, Sam? I want to make a point about what you're saying. Sure. I think that's wholly dependent on having another player with you.
And to be fair, it is. That's why I said that one comes with some asterisk marks. I just want to use a more example of the type of stuff I'm getting at. Prey Moon Crash, the new expansion that came out.
I haven't done that yet.
Crazy stuff that you have to do in order to accomplish your objectives. Because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't played it, but the nutshell version is you have to play as 5 different characters to escape the moon, and they all have to work together. And one person might be able to do this. They might be able to hack into a terminal, but they can't move this heavy object out of the way, so the other one will have to. And the longer you stay in that particular playthrough, the more dangerous the world gets. So you've got to manage them all and make them work together, and it provides some really satisfying stuff of someone recycling some materials and getting a gun for the other person to use, leaving med packs where the other person can use it, things like that. And then, the third pillar in terms of narrative structure, again, I'd go back to The Witcher 3. I know I'm biased, as everyone well knows, but I don't think anyone would argue that the quests in that game are insanely well designed.
No, dude,
in terms of the writing. And yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. My issues with the game aside, that game has the best side quest in any open world game I've ever played. Like the Bloody Baron side quest is better than that has a better narrative hook than some actual main storylines in games I've played.
It is a main quest. Bloody Baron's a main quest, though.
I thought that was a side quest.
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
It's a main quest that kind of goes off into a side quest.
It's a main quest
there's like a little bit
side quest.
Yeah.
Because half of it is a main quest, but the second half where you actually get the completion of everything isn't a main quest. That is optional. So you're both right. But the point is, so there's satisfying narrative storytelling there, and I think the thing is, open world games, like I'll just use Assassin's Creed, the recent Assassin's Creed games for me. It's like Assassin's Creed 2 and even Brotherhood and Revelations to a degree really innovated in terms of your traversal, your terms of moving around, the combat, things like that. It's a huge leap over the first game. But how has it evolved since then? In my opinion, it really hasn't. Not really. Maybe the naval stuff in Black Flag.
Origins has actual usable controls, so I mean that's a pretty big change.
But here's the thing about Origins, right? And again, this goes back to every problem I have with standardized, and I'll just use that phrase, standardized open world games. Like, Assassin's Creed Origins was supposed to be this renaissance for the Assassin's Creed series. They looked at Syndicate and they looked at all the problems it had, and they said, let's take a year off and let's go back to the drawing board. And they came back, and nothing has changed. And I'm talking from a gameplay loop perspective, right? Like, I get that the scenario has changed. I get, I get voice acting, the characters are nice, but I'm talking from a gameplay loop perspective. And that game, literally, a huge turnoff for me in Assassin's Creed Origins was literally gating main missions behind having to do side missions. The game literally forced you to do side quests in order to progress in the main story, and I fucking hated that. I hated that, and I ended up resenting the game for it.
A lot of games do that as padding.
They do, and that was the reason that I dropped it, because I was like, I want to play this game through to completion. The side quests don't interest me. I don't feel like an assassin, and I want to get through this. I absolutely hate main storylines in any game being gated behind meaningless garbage. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 did it. Assassin's Creed Origins did it. Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, I've never actually noticed. Like, I hear complaints about that with Origins, and I hear it with Dragon Age Inquisition and stuff too. But I always get so caught up in doing side stuff that I have never been anything more than supremely over leveled for anything that has a level gate. This kind of actually leads into what I wanted to say about
Please.
Origins. Unless Sam still has some stuff he was
not
saying.
really. I was just trying to build on what Brandon was saying in terms of open world games need to evolve. Might be a strong word, but they have to be satisfying. They have to push the boundaries of those.
It needs to be fun to explore. You need a reason to clear the fog of war on your map.
Right. It needs to be fun to explore. It needs to be satisfying, and you need to want to. And
maybe the way Rockstar games do it is the fucking radio, right? What defines the GTA games? It's their fucking radio. And the reason is because you're spending so much of the game driving. You're just driving all over the place. But you don't care.
GTA 5, not to cut you off, but just this is the last thing I'll say, really builds on if I play GTA 5, it's I just want to mess some stuff up. That's all. I've got 3 sociopaths that I'm playing as. I may as well just have some fun with this, right? That's how it lures you in. But Justin, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So Yeah, so with Origins, I kind of had the opposite problem where I was like, the way the map is set up, and with they like, fill it with so many different like areas to clear. It's like, oh, here's an alligator nest. Here is, an outpost and stuff. And so like I felt compelled to do all those things before I moved on from area to area. And at some point, I was like 15 levels over where I needed to be, and I had gotten a legendary weapon that poisoned. So like it was insanely easy because
That's
of
exactly what happened to me in Shadow of Mordor.
Yeah.
It was just like I did so many side quests at the beginning. It was just like, oh jeez. And the
Yeah,
combat was
so-
already easy. Like it's already very
Yeah,
forgiving combat.
Yeah, and so like I really enjoyed Origins for like the first like 30 hours or so that I played it, and like I put over 40 hours into it, and then I just stopped because all I was doing was just clearing each area before moving on.
You bring up a very good point. I want to expand on when you're done.
And then I revisited Horizon, just like last week, just because I wanted to wander around. So I really like Horizon, and I kind of realized that even though Horizon has a number of the like open world tropes, like you have the tall necks for the towers and like there's bandit outposts and stuff, it doesn't do them to excess like Origins does. Like there's like 6 bandit camps.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's so
like,
much about the pacing of side
Right,
quests.
right.
The pacing of it.
There's
And
like
some games just fucking shit icons out on your map like it's their job. Mad
Max. That's
Mad
exactly
Max.
what I was gonna say.
You open your map at the beginning of the game and it's just fucking icons all over. So like, I think one thing Rockstar does in both GTA and Red Dead Redemption is pace out the side content very well. Like you'll finish a main mission and they're only gonna give you 2 or 3 side missions to choose from. Like they're not shitting icons all over your map. Like you don't finish a map and it unlocks 30 side quests. Like it just gives you a couple of things to do. You never feel overwhelmed. Again, like it's the pacing of it.
I want to add,
Because I'm not gonna pretend that Rockstar's side quests are like fucking genius design. Like they're not doing anything wildly more amazing than the other developers, but I feel like they pace it out better than anyone else.
And then also like on that is there's also just like the idea of negative space in an open world where there's an area that you just are walking through
just to see it.
Yeah,
Because it's cool. It's interesting to you. Like if you were walking through a forest.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I mean, Horizon has a lot of stuff all over to do and stuff. But like, there's like one big section of the game where you, like, right after you leave, the Nora territory, you have to get to Meridian, which is like 2/3 of the way across the map, and it's kind of just, it's just like, okay, you have to get from point A to point B, and then there's like side missions that you could do along the way. There's like the tall necks, there's bandit camps, like you could go off and do stuff, and it kind of just is, it's not like it's driving you to any one thing in particular.
But God, Meridian was so beautiful. I just want to say.
And like that's also one thing I think is really interesting about what we saw from Death Stranding at E3 was there was a lot of just walking around
valleys.
Yeah, like really nice environments and stuff. It's like it doesn't look like it's going to be like with Assassin's Creed Origins, like it, there was a lot of stuff to do into it, but it almost feels not confident when it has something every few steps. Whereas like I think especially in games that have like more nature focused or wider spaces for open world games, obviously it's going to be different for something set in like a modern city. I think that sort of thing is really important.
Well, Mad Max, Mad Max was brought up. That's a great example of a game that literally ticks every box and does it in the most blasé, uninteresting way. There
was not an original concept to
Kyle, have you played Mad Max?
I have not.
So
it's the most average game.
Literally, it
is the portrait of a 6 out of 10.
It is the color taupe of video games. Like it is the pudding. It is the plain vanilla pudding of
The
video
oatmeal.
games. Like it
Not-
like
that's not to describe how it looks, because it is a gorgeous.
it's a gorgeous game.
Oh, it's pretty, yeah.
It
They
plays
nailed
like
one
the
thing.
color of
Yeah.
vanilla.
But
color
like there is like literally,
The
Kyle,
flavor.
the game is one giant desert with nothing in it, but like a few scattered towns, and the
Nothing in it except little check marks all over.
all
It's insane.
over.
It is insane how much bullshit they crammed into it.
And it's all like, oh, here's some junk. Like here's some
It's
water.
all junk.
Like
And
here's some scraps, and then
here's one thing you have to shoot your harpoon at.
and oh
and then
god, the
drag it over.
towers in that game are the fucking
It's
worst in any
So
open
much
world
repetitive
game
content.
ever. It's the concept is really cool. They're hot air balloons, and you get in the hot air balloon, and it
How
makes
do you make-
sense.
How do they make Assassin's Creed fucking worse than turn it into hot air balloons?
Dude,
That's
like
fun.
it makes sense from an aesthetic standpoint, right? Like you get in the hot air balloon and you blow it up, and that makes you see everything.
and it
but
reveals your map. Right?
but those hot air balloons go so.
It takes like 30 seconds to get your hot air
slow.
balloon all the way.
Yeah,
down.
and you're
And
like,
it kinda,
All you're doing is holding down a button. for
yeah,
like 30
and
it is so
and it
bad.
misses the point of why like the towers and stuff are fun, because like at least with like the towers there's usually some kind of like platforming
you're
puzzle,
climbing. Yeah,
and then
you're
there's the
climbing them.
satisfaction of getting to the top instead of
jumping
just
down into the
instead
halo.
of just
Yeah, doing
putting
the
gas in a
swan
hot
dive,
air
yeah.
balloon and
Yeah.
going up. Like
well, and then
It completely failed to understand what makes revealing the maps in Assassin's Creed exciting.
well, and then you had that fucking asshole in the back of the car with you who never shut his goddamn mouth the entire game. Chum bucket.
Cum bucket.
Chum bucket. Did you say
Chum
cum bucket? Did you say cum bucket? Jesus. But no, chum bucket. Every 5 seconds, hey Saint, there's something over there, Saint. Like he keeps calling you Saint, and every time he sees something, he
Didn't
starts.
we rant about Chum Bucket last week or the week
Yeah,
before?
like well, no, yeah, dude. Oh my
I
god,
feel like
fucking
we
Chum
just
bucket.
ranted about Chum Bucket.
Every time he says something or he sees something, he starts slamming the hood of the car and making this noise. I'm like, oh my god, Chum Bucket, stop! Please leave me alone. Like I
and
suffered.
also like I felt like he kind of like defeated part of what like
The solitude.
Mad Max himself is
Yes.
about. Yeah, like being alone in the middle of the desert.
And you've got
Yeah.
this little idiot in the back of your car screaming at you the entire time. Like, and it's but let's talk about. I think I'm literally choking on my own.
Are you
anger
gonna be okay,
thinking about
John?
thinking about Chum Bucket? But you know what? Let's use a recent example, and this will be something that Kyle will be able to chime in on. Let's use a recent example of an open world game to talk about ways that the genre is doing it right. And I'm talking about God of War. The new God of War is a fucking brilliant game, and it did for that series what I think Assassin's Creed Origins promised it would do for that series, but didn't, in my opinion. It was the shot in the arm that game needed, and it is an open world game. I would classify God of War as an open world game. Like, yes, there's a narrative that takes you from place to place, but you are free to go about and do other things and explore other things. To me, it is very much an open world game, and it is probably one of the best narratives I have encountered in an open world game. And so let's talk about, like, I think God of War and Horizon and Breath of the Wild are three really great examples of what open world games can be if they do it right. And they each do it for different reasons, right? Like I think each game brings something to the table that genre desperately needs. For Breath of the Wild, for me, it would be like the ability to just go out there and break the world or fuck with things in ways that other games don't let you do. In God of War, I think that it's from a gameplay narrative, one of the best. Like it was one of the most eminently playable open world games I've ever played. Like the combat in that game just sings, and everything in that game to me, from a gameplay perspective, is driven by that combat loop. That keeps feeding you abilities. The axe. I mean, throwing that axe is one of the most satisfying fucking things I've ever done in a game. And I want to get your guys' take on that. Like, what did God of War bring to the open world genre that you feel that you want to see done in other games in the same genre?
I'll give my because the games you're naming, of all the ones that have been talked about, really, the only one I have played to completion is God of War. And I've enjoyed a lot of them. It's not that I thought a lot of them are bad games necessarily, but there's a lot where I get 15, 20 hours in, like, okay, I'm like not even halfway done with this. This is cool, but fuck.
And you've seen it all.
I'm not gonna finish.
I
Right,
mean,
right.
15 hours,
Like,
you have seen everything.
yeah, like
essentially.
I don't feel like I need to spend more time on this to say that I've played this game. Even games like Horizon Zero Dawn, where it's a beautiful game, there's a lot of good stuff in it, not finished it. Breath of the Wild, not finished it. And I think the thing that has set God of War apart from those, for me at least, and I it might be different for other people, is there was a compelling story that made me two things. One, I wanted to keep playing because I wanted to know what was going on. But two, it was an open world that didn't make me play in an open world, if that makes sense. It doesn't make you go explore these other places that have no relevance to what you're doing. If you want to, you can, and that's awesome. If you're like me and you just really want to get to the next point of the story, you're right there and you keep going. You don't have to go to this random little area and grind for 2 hours just to be able to get to the next point of the story. You don't have to go collect things for someone just to be able to get the next weapon or whatever. Like, you can just play the game consistently straight through and go through the story if that's the way you want to do it. And for me, part of it for me is I don't have as much time as I used to have. I teach, and so I'm busy all the time. During the fall and spring, I usually only have about 3 or 4 hours a week to play video games.
Oof.
I don't want to spend that much time all on one game every week for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months just to get through one game when there are so many other things I want to get through. So when I'm fine with spending 30, 40 hours on a game where I'm going through an incredible story and I feel compelled to play it and I feel compelled to know what's going on. Someone in the chat just mentioned Tomb Raider.
Tomb Raider, I saw that, yeah.
That's 100%. So I had not played the new Tomb Raider games, but when they announced the third one, I played through the first one. I still need to go play through the second one. But I'm playing through that, and it's one of those same things where it's like, I feel like I can just kind of follow the story. I can just go through it, get through it. Sure, when I do that, I'm probably only 20% complete with the game. There are so many other things I can do to finish the game. But I don't need to do those to have actually played and gotten everything that I need from that game. And with stuff like Assassin's Creed is probably the one I quit the fastest on, because to me it felt like just a generic RPG and it no longer felt like Assassin's Creed. It just felt like the Assassin's Creed name on any other RPG I played. Great game, great concept, mechanics, everything. It's fine. All of that stuff is good. None of it is poorly made, but it was so bland and it had been done before. And nothing, at least in the beginning from the story, had really dragged me into feeling like, okay, I really need to keep going through this. So it's that to me is the thing, and I think that's I don't know how many people are in that same boat where it's just I have limited time to play games, and I don't have time to keep wasting doing all these. Go explore. Breath of the Wild to me is an incredible game, but you have to spend so much time exploring everything, and I don't have that kind of time.
I've got like 170 hours in that fucking game.
Yeah, I will never realistically be able to put that into it, and most people, that's not common to be able to put that much time in it. You have to be really dedicated, and I wish I was that dedicated, but I kind of like sleeping. But it's one of those things. It's just it's if you have the time to put into that, man, that's awesome, and I wish I had that. But it's hard, and so I think that's what for a lot of those games, for me in particular, I've been burnt out by open world games, where I know if I want to get the full experience, I'm gonna have to spend anywhere from 80 to 100 hours minimum, and so that turns me off before I even get started, and it's a disappointment because I hear all these are really, really good. And there's a lot that I really want to play, and a lot that I've started I really want to finish. I agree with you, John, on Shadow of War. I am a massive Lord of the Rings fan. Grew up on them. My parents are actually moving into a new house, and I'm going over as soon as they move in to watch Return of the King with my dad, because that's what we want to do. Yep. So it's like that is something that has always been big to me. I gave up after like 8 or 9 hours.
I couldn't believe how fast I fell off that game. I just couldn't do it. And don't even get me started on Far Cry 5. I bought Far Cry 5.
Yup.
I downloaded it. I played through the opening cutscene with Joseph Seed, and I literally took about 30 steps forward into the open world, and I was like, I don't fucking care. And I just stopped playing it, and I have not picked it up since.
The only time I've gone back to Far Cry 5 in the last couple months is to co-op it with a friend, just to drive around doing stupid shit, not actually caring about the story.
I knew as soon as I started that game, every Far Cry game starts the same. You have a vignette with the villain. He's the first thing you see, and you learn a bit about him, and then some calamity happens. And either in Far Cry 3, you know, Voss takes you hostage, and then you escape. In Far Cry 4, what's his name? Pagan Min. You meet Pagan Min, and then he's like, you enjoy the crab rangoon, I've got to go do something, and then you fucking escape, and the people are shooting at you. And then in Far Cry 5, you meet Joseph Seed, and your helicopter crashes, and you're like, okay, well, I'm in the open world now. And I was like, I already know this is going to end. It's going to be some fucking weird ending where, you know, in Far Cry 3, spoiler alert, I'll just say some fucked up shit happens, and then in Far Cry 4, you have the choice to either kill Pagan Min or take over from him. And I knew the same thing was going to happen in Far Cry 5, but I'll have some weird ending. And I just found that I just don't care. I just don't care. I can't bring myself to care.
Far Cry 4 was, to me at least, because I finished it, better than Far Cry 5. But Far Cry 5 said, okay, Far Cry 4 was successful. We're going to take that same format. We're going to put it in a different world. We're going to change a few minor things. And then we're basically just going to give you the same game.
I mean,
and
Far
you're going to buy
Cry has
it.
been creatively bankrupt since 3.
Five?
Yeah. No, I will agree. It's been relatively creatively bankrupt since 3, but when it comes to 4, it was the first time they had really started to kind of do that, and so it was more palatable. And then when they do it again, you're just it's what Assassin's Creed became.
I enjoyed 4. I enjoyed 4 because it improved on the minor things that I disliked about 3. But then I enjoyed Primal. I don't know. Far Cry is like a weird.
Primal was actually pretty good. Yeah.
It is a weird comfort food for me, but it has a lot of problems as a series.
Yeah. 5, like, my problem was like the first area that you're in. Like, I mean, you can go in any direction, but like the one that most people did first is way better than the other two. And also because of the whole, you can go anywhere and do anything in any order, like the outposts were really kind of boring because they were all balanced around you being able to do them as like a low level character with like no weapons and stuff, and you didn't have the same kind of sense of progression as the other Far Cry games.
Well, I think one of the things that bugs me about Far Cry is that, like I just said in chat, like, the series needs a rehaul, and I thought that Far Cry Primal, I just call it Far Cry Caveman, was going to provide it that, simply because it's a fucking setting that we never see. But cavemen.
The gameplay was the same.
But
Far Cry without guns.
It was, but
it's still the same structure, same format.
It was, but I think that was. I think honestly, that was that. If they had taken that concept and run with it, like Blood Dragon. Blood Dragon was like, it was more of the same, but it was a fucking hilarious 80s atmosphere. Like, when you healed yourself, he pulled out that fucking, wrist exercise, and he's like, yeah, I gotta get a pump. Like, that's how you heal yourself.
It only took 10 hours to beat.
Exactly, yeah. So
bite-sized length.
But, so that's actually something, and it was brought up in the chat, too, with the Mars DLC for Far Cry 5, where it's I haven't played it yet. But I've heard that it's really good, and it's Far Cry is best when they go batshit insane.
I agree completely.
When you
my
play
favorite mission in Far Cry 4 is the one where it's like it's called Advanced Chemistry, and it's like when you shoot people, they turn into street chalk almost. Far
Cry staying. It's kind of the reason the Just Cause games haven't ever gotten stale for me, because it's a lot of like you can just do all this batshit stuff that makes no sense, but you can do it because it's a video game. It's not. It takes itself seriously, but not too seriously, and so I think that's where Far Cry. That's where they bred. Even my favorite missions in Far Cry 5, where the stuff involving the aliens, dude, where you go get the alien gun, like that shit was funny because there's aliens, and it makes no sense that it would exist in this universe, which is why I like it so much. That's where Far Cry is, and they deviate from that.
I want a Far Cry with dinosaurs.
Oh my god,
I'm not talking about like Primal. I'm talking about I want to be able to shoot an RPG at a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Dude, no. Justin, I'll take it a step further. I want a fucking open world Turok.
Yeah.
Here's what you all want. What you all want is and it can be open world, fine. But a game where you play as Jeff Goldblum, voiced by Jeff Goldblum, hunting down dinosaurs. There's nothing else to it. There are no other characters. There is no explanation for why he's doing it. You are just Jeff Goldblum, probably on shrooms, running around killing dinosaurs.
Every time
I would pay so much money for that.
Every time you pick up ammo as Jeff Goldblum, I want him to say, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds in this ammo box. Like that would be fucking brilliant, man.
You use a minigun, you're like gunning down a field of velociraptors and stuff, and all the T-Rex comes crashing. Well, that's chaos theory.
It's like, and now here I am killing dinosaurs. That's chaos theory.
Think about why we all got at some point decided to go play Far Cry games, and I could be speaking for other people when I shouldn't be, but for me, I got into Far Cry games because it's like, yeah, you can like set something on fire and it burns fucking everything around. It was this crazy stuff that you weren't seeing in other games that made them revolutionary at the time. Where you're like, yeah, it's same with Grand Theft Auto. The reason those games are so popular is the stuff you can do is not common. It's not stuff you can do in other games. But lately, every open world game feels like it's just a reskin of another game that I've played, but with mildly different characters.
You just said something very interesting, and I think this bears mentioning. It's the little details in open world games that really impress me. And when you talk about
it is the little details.
And a great example is the first time in Breath of the Wild when I blew up a barrel, and there was like a chicken thigh inside, but it was cooked because I had blown it up and it caught fire and it cooked. And I was like, that is fucking awesome. Like that chicken thigh, because normally when you kill an animal, you get like a raw bird thigh. That's an item, right?
Right.
And I open a chest up and there's like a raw, or I'll like smack a barrel and there's like a raw steak in there, right? Why there's a steak in a barrel in a cave, whatever. But there was one time I went to a cave and I blew a bomb up and everything caught on fire. You know, all the enemies running out of fire. And the barrel had caught fire and burned to ash. And it cooked the steak inside. And so the item I picked up was a cooked prime rib. And I was like, and for whatever reason, it gave me the biggest smile on my face. I was like, that is fucking cool. That is so fucking awesome.
But here's the problem, though, and I say again, Breath of the Wild is a great game, but it really is a great metaphor for just Nintendo in general. They put out something that has so many of these small things where you're like, man, this is so fucking good. Who came up with the idea to put cooked chicken in a barrel? Like,
I mean, it's just a video game, so you know, but at some point I've got to.
No, but the things they come up with like that are genuinely. You're like, who thinks of that? That is so cool. And then your weapon breaks for the 1000th time.
I will say that all the Smiths in Hyrule need to be fired because they're not very good at their jobs. But
I mean that's Nintendo in a nutshell for you. Everything about it is so good, and then they have one thing where you're like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
But
why would you do that? That's the dumbest fucking thing anyone's ever done. You've taken something so great and you ruined it, but I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna give you my money because you're Nintendo. And
Kyle
it's great,
is so
but
mad that he loves Breath of the
perfect.
Wild. You sound so upset that you like Breath of the Wild. It's great. I love it.
No, I am. It is such an unbelievably frustrating game to play, but I love it. And I still haven't finished it because I spend so much time just running. I have probably logged well over 100 hours, and I'm not even halfway done with that game. Because I just run around doing stupid shit because I don't care, and I get pissed off when my weapons break.
So here's the last topic I'll bring up about open world games. Because I don't think we can't cover this if we're talking about what open world games need to do. I think we also need to have a brief discussion on what open world games are influencing in other games, because I'm sure everybody has noticed the growing trend of open world elements being implemented into games that normally wouldn't have them. God of War is a great example. Halo is another great example.
Infinite. Oh yeah.
Halo Infinite is an open world game. And so Uncharted 4, another great example, as well as Lost Legacy. I mean, Madagascar was a big open space.
The Last of Us Part 2. The wider levels than anything we've seen before.
Even Octopath Traveler is an open world game. You can go to the edge of the map from the beginning of the game. I wouldn't recommend it because you're going to get eaten alive, but you can do it. So I feel like sometimes this works to the game's advantage, and I feel like sometimes this works to the game's detriment. I don't think everything needs to be open world. I don't think everything should be open world. and I'm going to use Halo as an example of that. Like I've played all the Halo. I haven't played Halo 5, so full disclosure. But I've played Halo 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I don't, you know what? The fact that that is possibly it's not possibly the fact that that is Halo Infinity is an open world game makes me less excited about it. Because I don't think that kind of structured narrative lends itself well to the idea of an open world game. Like, look what it did to Metal Gear Solid 5. Right?
True. Okay, so I'll let you finish, but I think there's some key details that you're missing there.
Okay, so no, like all I want to say is open Metal Gear Solid 5 was made an open world game, and Metal Gear Solid, that series has always had a very straightforward narrative. Like, yes, it's confusing, but it's also being told in a straight line. And the way Metal Gear Solid 5 handled its story was borderline incomprehensible to me. I don't think that sort of narrative fits itself well into the structure of an open world game. I think that those style narrative games need to be not on rails, but they need that organization of being set along a certain path without a lot of deviation left and right. And I don't think that's going to work well for Halo. But I do, Sam. I do want to hear the points that you have to make.
So first off, I think the fact that it's more open, I think we do need to check ourselves. I'm still checking myself right now in terms of saying it's open world, because we don't really have any confirmation apart from it's going to be huge. Okay, so
Yeah.
there's 10,000 ways they can take that for starters.
I mean, the name tells me that. I mean, Halo Infinite,
I think the name also refers to longevity in the story, but that's another discussion altogether, if I'm being honest. Okay. But if you think about it, what levels from past Halo games really stand out, are really remembered over and over again? It's the ones with the more open elements, like Halo, when you first touch down on the ring and there's scattered Marine groups and you have to, okay, find a Warthog, let's see who we can link up with. Let's see if we want to go over to this tower here or this tower here. And it's not ridiculously huge. I mean, it was back on the original Xbox, so, memory constraints.
2001.
Yeah, but it was big for the time.
It was huge.
For a shooter, for a
first-person shooter.
It was huge. And I feel like that's the kind of design that Halo will benefit from in terms of, or like in Halo 3, when the Scarabs would drop down, it's like, well, figure it out. Go have fun. You got rocket launchers, so you could use that, or maybe you could try flying in and dropping on top of them. It's those open elements where it's not on rails, it's not a corridor shooter, but you still have some tools to play around with, even though it's pushing the player in a general direction. I think or at least I hope that's what they're going for. But so that's just my take on it. We'll see more, obviously, next year, because right now it's still early.
I'm afraid that Halo is going to fall victim to this idea that we need to have some sort of open world element in our game. Because, I mean, like Sam, imagine like a Halo game with side quests and NPCs. And I don't think that Halo, I don't think the way that narrative is told, I don't think it lends itself well to, okay, well, you know what? Cortana has gone, rampant, and we're trying to save the galaxy. But hold on, I've got to collect 10 microchips. From
I
this
don't
guy.
think there's going to be anything like that, though. I really don't. I could be wrong.
I also want to point out, like, this is pure conjecture on my part. We don't know enough about it, right? Like, it could be nothing like this at all.
If you want to talk about more open games, I think Gears is actually a much more concrete example.
You think
because
so?
we know they've talked about how you're going to have that parasailer that you'll be used to traverse tundras, to traverse frozen lakes and deserts.
See, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I don't. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm really interested in Gears of. It's just called Gears 5, right? Like, they're not calling it Gears
They've
of War
dropped
4.
the of war, and I'm actually writing about why that's very significant.
Well, I don't know. Do you think that's tied into the fact that it's a more open game? Do you think it's going to be? Do you think that they're trying to make a point with this? Like, we are setting ourselves apart from the rest of the series and trying something new?
Well, I mean, I don't want to derail us too much, but basically Rod has talked about how he felt 4 was like a bridging title for them to get their act together at the new studio and all that, and that this is them really playing around with and taking those mechanics from Gears of War, like the cover, the combat, the counters, chainsawing, whatever, things like that, big bosses, and then applying them to new sets of mechanics and new sets of rules. So we'll see. That's next year.
I think we can all agree that, like, the absolute nadir of games that didn't need to be open world would have to be Metal Gear Solid 5 this generation, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's there's a ton that happened there. You want to talk about a whole nother conversation? That is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
but it did not need to be open world.
And it was fine. Like the gameplay in you know, Metal Gear Solid 5 was second to none. Like it had in my opinion, it had some of the best actual core gameplay in the series. But I feel like that the open world structure of that game completely destroyed the narrative. And Metal Gear Solid is a very narrative focused series, right? Like that. I mean, Brandon, what was it like? Gears of War. Metal Gear Solid 4 had like what fucking hour-long cutscenes. I mean, it was like watching a fucking movie. And
your mic was kind of echoing.
oh no, it's just like Metal Gear Solid 4 had what, like hour-long cutscenes in some parts. Like it was.
I mean, all of the Metal Gears do.
Yeah. So and then there was nothing like that in Metal Gear Solid 5.
No, not even close. And that was good because that's what I hated about Metal Gear. But yeah.
But like I don't feel like I feel like the fact that the game was so open it was such an open world game. I feel like that to me was the pinnacle of this generation anyway. Of this game didn't need to be open world, but open world games are popular and they sell. So let's find a way to fit it into that.
I don't know. I felt like they could have justified the open world with more time, but I mean, it's an unfinished game, and it just feels.
It absolutely is, yeah. Well, and that's something else that's a whole other conversation about Metal Gear Solid 5. But yeah, I mean, Kojima was just.
It's literally an unfinished open world. There's just nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I feel like the intent was good from the beginning, but they just didn't finish it.
I would also add in that sometimes I'm guilty of this as well, just in my closing statement for this topic, that we think of things like open world games and not open world, linear. And there is a lot of middle ground there to be explored that can be done in very, very interesting ways.
I agree.
You know,
I mean,
like,
that's kind of
I'll go back to... Sorry, go ahead.
Naughty Dog's been talking about with like they've been calling their recent games like wide linear.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I think God of War fits into, like even on a bigger scale. Like there's a difference between what I think of when I think of like a linear title and an open world game. But yeah, I think there's definitely been, you know, more of a shift towards this like wide linear approach for, you know, more scripted and curated games.
All right. Well, I think we're bumping up against 10:30, and I've got to get to bed. So I think we'll probably draw it to a close here. This has been a great topic. This is something I've been wanting to talk about all week, and I wanted to talk about it last week, but we weren't able to make it happen because we had some, you know, we just couldn't do the podcast. So I'm glad we did it this week. Just a few points before we go. So I'm going to make another attempt at an anxiety podcast on Sunday. I fixed my audio issues, so I'm going to do that again this Sunday. We've got some guests coming up in the next few weeks. Brittany Braunbacher from What's Good Games will be on. So that'll be really good. Of course, if you don't know, she does What's Good Games with Andrea Renee and Christine Steimer. So looking forward to that. What else we got coming up? Some other cool stuff I'm not ready to talk about yet. But anyway, Sam, it's always a pleasure to have you on. You know that. I don't need to tell you that.
Always. It's always great. Always great to talk. This was a really good conversation.
I really like this topic.
I like deep dives into game mechanics and things like that, and I want to try and start writing about them more because it's stuff like this that fascinates me.
Well, and I think I want us to on this podcast to focus on that more, like actually talking about mechanics, talking about what makes a game tick, as opposed to just talking about the news. You know, like you can go to gaming news to IGN or any other podcast, but I want to talk about games, and I want to talk about what we love about them. I want to tear them apart and put them back together and have a discussion on that. So I think that's what we're going to focus on this podcast going forward, because I really love the topic of a discussion tonight. And of course, Kyle, it was fine having you on. It was just fine.
It was just mediocre.
It was just fine having you on.
6.5 out of 10.
I had a mildly around average experience.
I thought you were going to say a mildly arousing experience. I was
that's what I was. Yeah, waiting for it.
And that's honestly what I thought. That's honestly where I thought you were going. So I don't know what that says about me or not. God, I know I need to get to bed, but all I want to do when we get off is just play Octopath Traveler. Like that's all I want to fucking do is play this goddamn game. Square Enix, what have you done? But anyway,
How often do you wake up in the middle of the night to like go to the bathroom and instead sit and play Octopath Traveler for like 3 hours?
I've done that like once. I did it once actually on this past Saturday night. I actually woke up. I went to bed at like I was up till 1:30 playing the game, and then I woke up at like 4 to take a piss. And then, like, you know, I was like, oh, fuck it. I went downstairs and, like, just pulled my Switch out of the dock and sat on the couch and played Octopath Traveler for another 2 hours. But I'm not going to say I haven't done that. But, man, this game is in my head like no other game has been in a long time, and I love it. And with everything I'm going through mentally right now, like, this is like the chicken soup that my fucking gaming soul needed right now. So I'm really loving it. And, of course, there's a bunch of great games coming out in the past. Oh, by the way, real quick. I don't know if you guys saw or not, but did you see that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe got a fucking update today?
Yep. The Breath of the Wild update.
Breath of the Wild update. Yeah. Well, I am so impressed that they're still. Well, here's the thing. That game is consistently on the top 10 NPD charts every month since release, so it doesn't surprise me. Because Mario Kart, like every time there's a Mario Kart release, like everybody's playing. Like that's one of those games that always has a fucking audience.
Yeah.
Everybody's always playing that fucking game online. I can get on.
There are people that still play Mario Kart 64.
Oh yeah, so I mean, those games are always gonna have fucking people playing. But anyway, we'll go ahead and cut it off here. Sam, stick around real quick because I wanna tell you something funny that happened this week. And for everybody else, as always, it's not always poetry. We don't always agree, but we always keep it real. So until next week, please take care of each other. Have a good one, guys.
Witcher 3 combat is GOAT.